name's Mark Shropshire, and I've been doing Drupal for a long time. But I'm also getting into Meteor now, and we'll talk a little bit about Meteor and what that means and why I'm into it, that sort of thing. But I'm not abandoning Drupal, so don't anybody worry about that. It just means that someday Meteor may take its place in my life. But we'll talk about why it isn't today, which will be interesting. And you know what I wanted to talk about today is a project, it's an open source project, Spectacle, and it's how we're working in the Charlotte area and anywhere else. So you guys are welcome to help. We'll talk about that. How to do digital signage with Drupal and Meteor together. Is everybody familiar with digital signage and what that is? Has people have heard of digital signage or seen it? See some people nodding. So digital signage, put together just a little description of what I think it is, how I'm approaching it from the project standpoint. But you've seen signs inside retail areas and banks, maybe inside at universities. I've got experience with digital signage at universities, and it's basically using screens of different sizes to display content. It could be advertising, marketing, could be event information, pretty much anything that you want to have up there. So at this point, what we're talking about is digital signage that's just a, how shall I put it? It's literally just something to stare at and look at, watching video, watching text, watching images, but there's also some great potential for interactivity. So Spectacle, I'll give a little background on it here. It is an open source digital signage publishing system. That's the fancy name for it, because we got to make our project pages look awesome. Spectacles does not. I'm sure everybody's looking it up now and they're like, what's this? It's a work in progress, but we at least have a nice slogan or description. But Spectacle started at about circa 2010. Spectacle 1 was built, shoot.
Microphone.
What's that?
Microphone.
Do I need to talk into the mic?
You should.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I didn't know if people couldn't hear me. I'm pretty loud. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Check, check. I'm having to really dig into the mic here, Matthew. I need some more gain or something. Now I really feel like the guy up here. So at any rate, Spectacle 1, we started that on Drupal 6. I was working at University of North Carolina at Charlotte. We were looking at, we had money. It was government. It was even after the economic issues, we still had money. It was magical. Thank you, all the taxpayers of North Carolina. But you know, you have budgets and you still want to spend your money where you want it. And some of the systems that I thought might be decent were about $40,000 just to buy the software. So I wasn't real keen on that. Some of the other projects that I thought might be cool kind of went away. So while we were moving into a new $80 million student union, and I was also dealing with desktop support and servers with a whole team of people trying to get that done, I thought, well, you know, I'll just make my own system. And that's what I did. I took about 2 weeks and created Spectacle 1. And it's still today being used, but you can definitely tell it was something done in 2 weeks and real fast. But it does suit the purpose. It works. It's running on about 40 screens throughout the campus. But it's on Drupal 6, and as much as all of us love using Drupal 6, you know, most of us don't anymore. And we'll feel the same way about Drupal 7, even though now it's hard to imagine that, but eventually we'll feel the same way about that. But at any rate, it's still being used. So what happened was, you know, it kind of felt like it's, you know, you have these projects and it feels like it's your baby, and you kind of have the little ego attached to it. But when I was pulled away to work at Classic Graphics, about almost going on 3 years now, I just kind of knew I had to leave that behind and just wish it well, and probably may not use it, not sure. So, but anyway, I keep up with my friends at UNC Charlotte, and they were saying, you know, we're having these problems with it, and it's this and that, and you know, of course, I was blaming Chrome. You know, I was like, of course, Spectacle 1's fine. So at any rate, but there were legitimate problems, and there's things that could be better. And I said, yeah, you know, it'd be great to upgrade it. I just have so many other things going, and I don't have any reason to work on it. But about a week after that conversation, had a meeting, got pulled in with a bunch of management people in our operation that usually they don't pull me into meetings to talk to me. So that was interesting and scary. But had a meeting, and they wanted to put digital signs around classic graphics operations so that they could help, because we're getting bigger and people don't know everybody like they used to. They want to kind of have some screens up to say, here's a little bit about employees, or this is a new person, or so-and-so turned 50. Who wants to have that on the screen, have themselves on a screen with that? That's fine. I'm not the guy making the content. We're just making the system. So we'll see how it works out. So I got back with the UNC Charlotte folks and said, hey, we've got a reason to look at this. So we, as many as great sprints we had going at, the community had going at DrupalCon Austin, I was stingy and said, no, don't go to those other sprints. They've got plenty of people working on them. Let's work on Spectacle. So we were able to get some people together to work on Spectacle 2. We started planning it. We're using a Trello board because this is a Drupal project and also a project that lives on GitHub, and it's a Meteor project. So Trello's kind of, for now, helping us plan this really well, it seems like. So there's our project links. And so there's the Drupal content management side, we'll talk about that, and the Meteor is the playback engine. And I just want to throw out a mention. You got to throw in a little bit of new tech just to look like it's impressive, massively impressive. You will not be impressed, but we do have Famous running in this. That's my one for the day. So Famous is a newer JavaScript-based system, and it basically is using WebGL to get into your hardware and drive animations. It's really geared for mobile, but I think it's got some potential for digital signage. If it doesn't and we don't like it later, we're going to rip it out and put something else in. But it does seem like it's got potential, and we are using it so far. So good. So we've got some partners. Charlotte Drupal User Group. It's an awesome group, very welcoming to anybody, beginners to advanced. Have a great group in Charlotte. Also, Meteor Charlotte. Kind of see a pattern here. A lot of the same folks are involved in the Charlotte community with these groups. And Classic Graphics and UNC Charlotte, the Student Union Activities Recreation Department. It's a mouthful. You probably will not remember that, but look them up. Spectacle use cases, or digital signage use cases, however you want to say it. Event marketing, organization news, retail advertising, conference room, event listings. This gets into the stuff that's a little different. So imagine having an iPad, because in my opinion, that's when you say tablet, you mean iPad, right? I'm just kidding around. I'm sure other people have other things. It's fine. But imagine having some tablet on a wall, and here's a conference facility that. They look great, Matthew, the signs, and they're awesome, and thank you for all that. But imagine if this facility had some type of system like Spectacle, and they could just have a tablet on the wall, and it would show the event listings, and it was open source, and they didn't have to pay $40,000 for it. So that you could do that. You could have a sign outside a room and show event listings. It'd be nice. You could have interactive directories. So imagine walking into a reception area at a business or something like that, university lobby of some building, and somebody could have a touch screen and actually look up a directory of staff that works there, or a map of the campus, or that kind of thing. So this gets into wayfinding. If you look up wayfinding, that's tied to digital signage as a kind of a weird term, but that's really what it is the mapping and finding your ways inside buildings with signage, which can be digital. So why Meteor? I'm going to do a little bit about Meteor, and I think there's some interest here, hopefully. So not if you're interested in Meteor, because I know a lot of us here probably know a lot about Drupal. I'll be glad to, I'll show and talk about exactly what Drupal's doing in a project. And it's not a Meteor better, Drupal better. They're different things, doing different things in this project. So I wanted to spend a little bit talking about what Meteor is and how that works. So Drupal's super strong. This is what we're doing here. Drupal's strong for content management. Meteor, think of it like it's a full stack framework. It's not like Angular. It's not like a lot of the other JavaScript frameworks you've heard of that offer maybe mostly front end help, MVC type stuff. This gives you a Mongo database. It gives you all the tools in between. You still have jQuery, and you've got Node. It's running on Node. It's a little different than if you've done Node development. Because it actually does blocking code. And if you're a Node developer, and that's awesome because I like it, it does seem weird to say we're making Node blocking, but it does make it easier for programmers coming from other systems to jump right into it and not have to worry about an event loop. And I'll be glad to, if somebody has questions about all that, I'll be glad to talk about that. but I don't want to go too technical here on that part of it unless we want to. But so Meteor is perfect for building real-time applications. It's actually, I think, perfect for building anything, and I think that's going to be my new answer. Is this the right thing? When they ask me at work, because they're always questioning, should we be using .NET or using something else? The answer is now Drupal can do it all, and Meteor can do it all. So we just add Meteor to the mix. It can do it. But really, Meteor does not have the content management chops that Drupal has. Drupal's got years and years now of content management framework. That's what it is. That's what it's built for. It's not a CMS, in my opinion. I like Krell basically says, it's a content management framework. I buy into that completely. It's for building applications, for building content management systems. But Meteor just doesn't have all that. You'd have to write all that. Who wants to do that? That's definitely not a Drupal way to do things, right? We want to download modules. Well, so Meteor's great for building that front end section of Spectacle in this case, and so we'll look at that some more, and and some more famous stuff. Got to throw that in there, and we'll probably rip it out. Probably go, that's this famous thing. It's not a thing. So this is off Meteor.com description of Meteor. So 7 principles of Meteor. Again, I'm just ripping stuff off the web. You could have stayed at home today, but I'm glad you came, and you could have looked this up. It's all on the internet. But these 7 principles are important. Meteor is a complete shift in the way you think about web and web applications from what we've been doing for the last ever how many years. It seems like it's been 50 years. It's probably only been like 10 years, right? But and maybe even less. But this is more like client server. So, and we'll get into this a little bit more. Drupal and WordPress and a lot of other systems. I did say WordPress. I apologize. They send the full HTML contents every time you make a request, all the way to you, unless you're doing some Ajax-y stuff. But Meteor, once it sends all the templates down on the initial payload, it's going to basically do everything is then just the data. Only sending the data back and forth, and it's all JSON. So that's the data on the wire. One language, JavaScript. If anybody's worked, I don't care if it's Drupal or Rails or whatever, having to jump between JavaScripts and PHPs and anything else mixed up. I mean, can I get an amen? One language? I don't know. It's pretty cool. Huh? Maybe not for JavaScript, and that's fair. That's a fair argument. I've sometimes have some of those feelings myself, and I can sympathize with that. Database everywhere. Meteor actually runs. So right now, it's pre 1.0. Meteor is running MongoDB as its database of choice. There's a reasons for that. It's tightly coupled with how basically Meteor does its reactivity and things like that. But and there will be other databases later. It's on the roadmap, but they're just trying to get this thing done. And so if we try to make it work with too many databases at first, it's never going to get out the door. But what we mean by database everywhere is that the client actually has in memory what's called a mini Mongo session, and it's basically like it has a lot of the Mongo command structures and things like that for querying, inserting data, but you can just run it in the browser. So I can insert records in the browser, and it eventually gets pushed up to the server usually pretty quick, but it does it when it connects next time or that sort of thing. So there is a copy. You can have copies of the database local, but and by default, you may hear Meteor's not secure. So a year or two ago, a lot of that came from the fact that Meteor would push the whole data model down, and this is great for fast prototyping stuff. You've just got your data on both ends. But there are some packages in Meteor. Don't want to get too deep into this, but glad to talk afterwards or whatever. I can talk about Meteor and Drupal all day, but there's some packages that you need to be careful about, and you need to remove from Meteor to make sure that you are controlling exactly the data that gets pushed. For instance, data that only the user that's currently signed into that client needs to access. Latency compensation, we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but basically everything looks to a client like it's happening immediate, as opposed to a traditional web application where you have to make a trip to the server and wait till it comes back. Even if it's Ajax, still has to do that. What happens is as soon as you click a button or you do something that needs to have a reaction on the screen, that can happen immediately because it happens in the local database. And at some point later, that transaction is reconciled with the server side, and everything's matched up and beautiful and moves along. And if there's a conflict or things like that, then there's Meteor helps resolve that conflict. Hopefully it happens quick enough. It's not a big issue. Full stack reactivity. I wish I just said reactivity. full stack. Everybody's like, we're full stack developers. I do everything perfectly and most awesome. I'm an expert at it all. But full stack, and if you say full stack, if it's on LinkedIn, it says full stack, it's fine. I'm just kidding. Reactivity in Meteor land means that I can take, like, I can have a session variable, and I can take an H1 tag, some text between some H1 tags in the HTML template. And I can literally have it so if a client somewhere else in the world makes a change that should affect that title, it happens while I'm on the page, no reloads, because you've got this persistent connection always open on the browser. No, you're not reloading the browser every time. So that's part of what that reactivity is. You can do it with you can basically make about anything reactive, any element, and pretty small chunks of the elements in the DOM also. Embrace the ecosystem. This one is a puzzler. I think what they mean is much like Drupal, especially Drupal 8, where a lot of things have been pulled in to core. I've got lots of funny jokes about that one, but I come from the old school small core guy, but I'll get over it, okay? But much like Drupal 8, let's pull in Symfony, let's pull in Backbone, let's pull in other pieces that has been figured out. Our Kung Fu's not best, even though I think Drupal's solid. Let's use things that have already been built and do a good job. Let's use those in our system. Meteor is using handlebars. It's a fork of handlebars, but it is basically handlebars using MongoDB. It's using jQuery still. So that's really what they're talking about there, is to leverage those things that are already out there, not trying to reinvent every wheel that's out there. And simplicity equals productivity. I don't know, this is a Zen list or what this is, but you can figure that one out. It makes sense, I think. And this is traditional web app kind of deal, database, web server, client. Database makes, the client makes the request, it has to go to the web server, has to go to the database. In theory, I mean, you may have caching and all this stuff going on, but then the full HTTP comes down, this huge payload, and we've got fast internet everywhere in the world, right? And mobile is super fast, and we have super phones, and so we're not worried about bandwidth, but we really are. We still are worried about bandwidth, and so that's still a concern. That's still something that happens on our traditional web apps that can cause issues in lots of scenarios. And in a Meteor application, so the database and the Meteor server, they're talking together, keeping in sync. More or less. There's an initial package that's sent when your client connects to a Meteor server, and that initial package contains all of the templates and all of the code that's needed to run, the data model, all that stuff. The client polls, it subscribes actually to data collections in MongoDB, and it's monitoring changes. And now there's an option to turn on oplog capabilities of MongoDB, which means that as soon as something changes in the database, Meteor doesn't actually have to poll. It actually pushes it straight back all the way into the client. But more or less in a dev environment, the way Meteor works, like I think it's every 15 seconds or something, it's actually doing a check for data changes, and then it gets the data updates from there. But all of that's just JSON. It's actually eJSON. Which has a little more definition on the data types that are being sent than regular JSON. And this is an example. These next little things, I'm clicking through this stuff. I don't know who made this presentation. It's weird. But anyway, this illustrates the local DB write is written actually. I'm pointing back into the client. That's what saved the client. And at some point, probably really quick, but at some point later, it actually writes back out to the Meteor server, which goes out to the database, which is Mongo land. So that makes things happen a lot faster on the client. Also makes Meteor much like a client servers, and this is hard for me to swallow a little bit because I remember lots of problems with client servers back in the 90s, but it definitely is much akin to a client server scenario versus just a dumb terminal, which the web's been very dumb terminal, and there's pros and cons to all this for a long time. But I do believe, and a lot of people do that are involved with Meteor and other frameworks that are coming out like it, this is kind of the future, this kind of thing, whether Meteor is or not, this is kind of where things are headed. Anyway, you can chew on that and we can argue later, because that's a very opinionated statement. Thank you. So to make all this magic happen, Meteor uses something called DDP. It's the Distributed Data Protocol. This is something that the Meteor development core team, and what that means is there's a core group of Meteor developers. They're funded. They've got a lot of funding behind them. That's kind of why they're moving along and doing a lot of things quickly right now. They just work on Meteor core all the time. And so the Distributed Data Protocol is the spec that actually says this is exactly how we subscribe to collections of data and how we move data between the clients and servers, between server to server, and that sort of thing. So DDP is real important. And another thing that I've read and heard and believe while drinking the Meteor Kool-Aid, I don't know what color the Kool-Aid is. You know, Drupal Kool-Aid's blue, right? But at any rate, but I do believe that this DDP has a potential to, and I'm using it as such with some other guys in the room on some projects. It has the capability to completely turn REST upside down. It actually, there's no need. It's like almost like we started working on REST APIs on some things, and then we're like, I don't even need it. We can just we have DDP clients already available for Objective-C and Rails and all these things, and it's much more efficient, and it's reactive, it's fast, and we're not using crons and things like that to run updates and checks. So I just want to show this real quick. This is Meteor's got a really nice, easy setup for a new app. You just basically type create the app name, and you CD into the directory. You type Meteor, and the app runs. That's new app you're running. So it's much of a feel to me like again I see a lot of parallels between the Drupal community and Meteor community. It's in the technologies and the way they think about things, but it's much akin to running distributions and drush makes and that sort of thing, just to make life really easy. So kind of that's a intro on the Meteor. I'll be glad to answer anything that I can. If I can't, someone else in the room that does Meteor probably can. We'd be glad to talk about it. So now we're getting into the spectacle specific stuff before we get into the demos. So we actually spent an entire sprint, and we've done now 4 or 5 sprints. Scott, do you think it's 4 sprints? We've had 4 sprints working on this so far, and it's still not there. We're still working on it. You know how these things are. But we actually spent a good half day talking through the content types, and you're sitting there going, this cannot be that hard. You just want to sit down and just start building it. It's so frustrating, but partly through it, I finally went, this just has to be done. So we've made out some content types to help figure this out, and so I'm going to kind of describe them, and we'll figure out just to give you an idea of how we're thinking of these pieces. Once everything's set up, like if you had 10 screens set up in an organization and they're all running, they can run different things at the same time. Day-to-day usage, posts at the bottom, that's the only thing people are really going to be working with. That's just the content type that lets you upload videos and images and text and things like that. Everything above that, content groups, template, layout, branding, and display, that's stuff that you configure ahead of time, and you've already done that when you set up your display. You really don't go back and change that stuff very often. So post is kind of the core, and that's what we're dealing with mostly now. Display, think of that like an inventory. That's going to be a 1 record per actual physical display on the screen or on a wall or whatever. It can contain, I think we've got fields in there like location and things like that. It's basically just to inventory, so you can have a view in Drupal to inventory those items. That's important, especially with a university that might have many screens, to actually even add fields to it and say this is for that department, here's a contact number and that sort of thing. That's what display is. Referenced back into display, we've got branding. Branding is right now a color picker in Drupal. We've got a field for color. It's a color picker of some sort that Scott put in there. So you can pick a background color, you can upload a background image, and you can upload a logo. And that's what we call branding. And there is a default. We're trying to figure out a way to handle it so that you upload, whatever you upload first is the default branding for all the signs. But you can have additional branding nodes, and those nodes could then be, because maybe you want all the signs facing internal to employees or something to look a certain way, but you want your customer facing screens to look a different way or some scenario like that. we want to give people the flexibility to have different visuals on the background, but realizing that some people are just going to go with one brand anyway, and it's fine. Layout helps dictate basically which, and that ties to the display. That's the configuration of the of what templates you're using and how they tie into the display, and we'll get into that a little bit more here. But the layout you may have header, content area, footer on a screen. You may have just a left and right area in the middle. You may have just a single large screen that's just a big image or a big video. That's effective from a marketing standpoint. So those are different options. The template is real simple. That's really just, I think that's a term, that may not be a content type now. That may be a term reference, taxonomy term now. I think templates, that's a little wrong. The guy that did this presentation failed, but the template is a term reference, but that's basically us telling the layout and the display. This is the template on the Meteor side that we're using, because Meteor knows templates by certain names, and so that's so we can pass along and tell Meteor, use this template with this layout kind of thing. A content group is just a collection of data. Think of it like if you're familiar with node queue or just a list of items that you display in a view. Content group is just a grouping of content, and right now it'll just drive a certain region of the display. So if you have a display split 50% into two sides, a left and right, each of those would have a content group of their own. That's just cycling images and videos is what we're focusing on right now. We need to have videos work kind of out of the gate. So that's why those things, after describing it, I hope it makes sense. That's why those things from above post really are, you don't deal with day to day. Once you're set up, you're good to go. These are the 4 templates that we're starting out with. Just a single image or video, large. We've got one with like a footer area. And coming up with names for stuff is hard. I mean, if someone has suggestions, like, I don't care what system you have, it's a package, it's a plugin, it's a module, so we've gone through this. So this bottom section in the footer, we're like, well, we want to have a weather thing and maybe that's a widget. So right now it's a widget until someone can come up with a better name, because I don't know what to call it. And I didn't come up with it, but we're game for anybody that wants to contribute. Naming would be a fantastic contribution. It doesn't have to be code, naming and documentation. But we have a kind of a header, content area, footer thing going on. And then UNC Charlotte does a lot of stuff where they have a footer, but they have a larger section on the left and then maybe a smaller, it's a little less than a third on the right. Those are the 4. We just wanted to have a small amount of templates to go with, and we're trying to figure out the best way to make it so people can make their own templates easily. We used to use, in the old Spectacle, we used panels and did that through panels plugins. But it was Drupal 6 stuff, but it worked pretty well. But we still need a way so people can have their own templates, and they're going to want to. These are some concepts that we're working with. So you've got your logo. So we're logo in the lower left-hand corner, your widgets or whatever, maybe a time and weather in the right, and those are we're calling them widgets for now because I want to have it so that you can just turn it on and off. Maybe you don't want on that screen, you don't want that to show up, you just turn it off on that screen. But the idea too is we're targeting right now 1080p displays, but we want to make everything as responsive as possible so that it'll sort of look okay on smaller screens. But we're taking that as far as we can realistically, because if you go all the way down to a tablet, obviously there's going to be some limitations, and certain templates probably will be better on certain size screens. And there's some others. There's our group at Austin. It's kind of dark. It was, the photo op at Austin was interesting. It was in front of a bright window. Anybody that's into photography, it's kind of interesting. And then there's Mason. He was an intern that worked with us over the summer. He's a good-looking guy, so we put him up there. So this is the concept of maybe just showing off some, introducing folks to other employees at Classic and that sort of thing. And then video. I don't even know why I put this in here. Video is important. We have to have video. That's something that I've been charged with for what we're doing at Classic, but it's something I've always wanted to do with Spectacle One, is make sure we can run video. And it's, just rotating slides alone isn't always good enough, and content is huge, frankly, with this stuff. Because we can have the best system ever, and if folks providing content, it's just like a Drupal site, right? If don't provide good content, don't work on the content, don't care about the content, just take it down. What does it matter? So we've all said those things in meetings recently, I think, where we've said to the people who say they're going to provide content, this is a job. Someone needs to be assigned this job and take it serious. So everyone's saying that they are, so we hope that they do that. Now I feel like a DJ. When's the bass drop? Okay, there we go. All right, so we'll do some demo things here. Yeah, questions. Ask questions. I always feel like I need to have a question slide at the end, more or less, but it's kind of funny. But yeah, so you can kind of follow some of our comings and goings between these two meetup groups. I'm more than willing to have anybody that wants to contribute, even if they're not in the Charlotte area. We'll make do. We're doing Google Hangouts and things like that, so willing to help out with that and making that work. But this is great. We've got good time to do some demo stuff. So, okay, so what we have so far on the Drupal side, and I can get kind of into some specifics now, what's going on here. The Drupal side is a distribution. So that project, I didn't mention that before, but it is a distribution. So you can, if you're familiar with installing distributions, we don't have all the docs there, but Mark Senior Belair here is going to take care of that for us. He's working on documentation like crazy. Let me tell you, yesterday's sprint, I told him he's the most important person on the team, because anybody that comes up and says, I want to do documentation, right? You hug them and you bring them into the fold and you say, we want you here. So Mark, thank you. You're on the hook, but you do get to do some coding, I promise. We'll get you some tickets out there or something to do it. But where we're at right now is we have content types. Scott led a sprint and really knocked out some stuff. So this is just the admin content page right now. And we've got Jeff over here. Fraser's working on actually a real dashboard, so that the idea is you'll come into a dashboard. It makes it easy to manage this stuff, rather than just having this. But we're just trying to get the plumbing of the system working right now. So you can see we've got posts and displays and basic page. Why do I have a basic page on there? Anyway. I don't like to delete basic page and article from a Drupal install, because I'm like, someone might need to use it. Maybe they need to have their spectacle site have an about page. I don't know. So I always leave that in my distributions. So here's a example of a display. We called it Press Floor North. We're a printing company. It's pretty awesome. We print big stuff on big pieces of paper, and they go out to big stores all over the country. So we do have actually things called press floors, and it's crazy huge. But I made up these names. I have no idea what they're going to call these, but direction seemed good. This is flexible. You can title your display whatever you want to identify it. And so there's room for description. We've got this is our references to the branding content types to say on this display the background, display the certain color, the logo that we want, and then the layout. For now, I have a layout called main. For again, naming stuff's hard, but we're kind of leaving it so that whoever uses Spectacle can name things whatever they want. Location, contact phone number. Again, the idea is we'll have a view that will display all this stuff nice and neat in an inventory fashion, so folks that have lots of displays can tell what's going on with which one. And my dream is to have some Meteor and Node magic to actually help push updates back in to that listing of a view to actually say, is this thing online or is it not online? When's the last time it pinged and talked and all that sort of thing. But that's at the display level. Example of some of this stuff's not as exciting because there's not as many fields. We just don't need them, and we're going minimal just to get this stuff done. So layout, I think we just have the name. No, we do have. Cannot believe somebody's calling me during this. I thought I alerted everybody. So we do have some links here. So we actually have, this is a term reference for the template. Right now we're calling them template 1 through 4. Those are the 4 options that Meteor's aware of, we mentioned earlier. Events and news is a content group. That's just a name I made up. That's just a bucket of content that will display in a section of the screen or the whole screen. And again, a name of whatever you can call that layout. Go ahead. Yes.
What's the square on the right when you have extra references there? Is that
This may be a broken bootstrap thing. Maybe what this is. I'm not sure. Let me look here.
But it's supposed
Well, it is an entity. So there's so the autocomplete's working. This is actually, the content groups is actually an entity reference. But yeah, I'm not sure.
It's a search like notifier. So you like rotate when you start searching.
Oh, is that what it is? Yeah. Did it do that just now? Did I miss that? Oh yeah, it's a square. Yeah. They're like, the spinners, it's been done too many times. Don't do the circle. Let's make a square rotate, because that's like a wheel. Those wheels work. A square wheel. I really don't remember it being like that before. Again, this is, excuse the mess, we're under active development. So that's a good question. I'm curious about that. That's not, Jeff can probably answer that one when he looks at it, because he's looking into the Bootstrap side of things. So the idea is, this is the goal. The goal is to, I'm going to do this. We're just going to do this. The goal is to have, to not use services. Even though services feels native and good for Drupal side, that's perfectly fine. And there's actually some Meteor ways to do things with services. Tim Brandon, who's a really good Drupal developer, is also in the Meteor community. He's written some awesome packages to use services if you want to go that route with Meteor. But again, trying to use best practices on Drupal, best practices on Meteor, and the best way to do this, I decided to use that DDP, that distributed data protocol. I want only those packets of JSON to move between Drupal, the Drupal world, and the Meteor world, and I don't want it to be, I don't need to be RESTful. I just want that stuff as soon as we save. So we're using, to shortcut, and I'll show you the code, we're using hook node pre-save. So as soon as, this is post-validation for a form. So we're grab and hold, and that's when we actually submit a call to a local node server. And that node server takes that data and then sends the fields we need as an RPC call, basically over DDP. It's just JSON over to Meteor. Meteor takes that data and just stores it in Mongo. So we're dealing with duplicating data of the data it needs. It's going to duplicate. That usually gives me shivers to say that. But some advantages, if you dealt with digital signage, is if Drupal goes down, and Drupal never goes down, never has performance issues. But if it ever goes down, or there's a network problem, we'll blame it on network problems. I always blame our network guy. It's never us, and usually we're right. It's usually infrastructure. The guys they're laughing. It is usually infrastructure, but all kidding aside, if it goes down, I want these displays to still work and cycle. So I'm trying to make some best practices with Spectacles so that the displays can still run. You can't. It would be kind of. I would hate it if somebody had this running in a ton of locations and everything just went down because Drupal went down and it wouldn't just kind of continue to operate. To do that, it means your assets have to live in some cloudy world that is not down also. But Drupal has a lot of mechanisms to go to S3 and other kind of the cloud storage mechanisms for your files. So
that use case aside, why, I'm just trying to wrap my head around why Meteor? Why not just use Drupal to deliver the content?
Okay, so great question. So Meteor, so Spectacle 1, we'll step back. I was using, even before we really had enough of the Ajax stuff going and figured out, was using meta refresh tags to refresh the browser. So new content would come in. They were basically driven, panels, regions, driven by views. You would refresh the browser, and I'd set it to refresh every 15 minutes or whatever. And there was cron jobs running in Drupal cron to update things along the way. And that's fine. It worked. I mean, no one probably but me cares. I mean, sure, the thing flickered for a second or two while it reloaded. It's probably me. You know how we can be technically and go, our OCD kicks in. We're like, that's unacceptable. Yeah. But it actually was acceptable for this many years. Apparently, I was wrong. But Meteor gives us an opportunity to have that persistent connection of the client to the Meteor server. If everything works right, you don't have any other issues. And it means that the browser doesn't have to refresh. It means that if I want, this is what it comes down to, where we're headed is, if I upload a new image to replace an existing image and the person is literally looking at the slide on the screen at the same time, that image will load in real time. They'll just see the image replace. That's the magic, really. I probably didn't make that so clear, but that's where Meteor just makes that easy. And there's other ways to do this. It's not like Meteor's got this industry cornered and no one else can have it. There's plenty of ways to do that kind of thing. I mean, I looked at Node.js integration with Drupal, and it's a pretty nice set of modules and stuff. It does a lot of cool stuff. But Meteor just makes it real easy. The templating is like, again, handlebars, super easy to grab hold of. It gives me so much hope and goodwill towards Drupal 8 and Twig. I mean, I'm stoked because I'm like, this is what it's going to be like. sort of. Except Meteor actually compiles less every time you. This is some more magic. Is this Drupal camp or Meteor camp? Let me say this one thing. I'm gonna grab. I don't want to lose it, and I'll catch you in just a second. I'm so excited about this. Imagine, if you will, those of us at Theme, I can have a text editor, and of course it's always PHP Storm, right? Because that's the only text editor you should ever use. I'm kidding. I don't use PHP Storm. I use Vim. No, I'm kidding. I don't use Vim. I won't tell you what I use because I'm just kidding. But you have your text editor open on one side of the screen. You have your Meteor application running and open on the other side of the screen, right? And you're sitting there looking at it. All right. Now think about what this is like, not just with Drupal, but other traditional web frameworks. In Meteor, I can literally go and edit CSS in a less or SAS file or whatever, and hit save. The Meteor hot pushes, Meteor itself, the core, hot pushes that code to every client connected, which is on one of them's open on my browser immediately. And in addition to the hot push of the code, it actually refreshes everything without losing the session. Take that for a second, think about it. What that means is it just recompiled less. I don't have to use CodeKit or run some, watch thingy in the terminal and all that kind of stuff. It literally compiles it, takes care of that, pushes the code out. The browser gets an update. I didn't have to refresh the browser, use live reload or some other, all of us have used these crazy mechanisms to try to get this to work. And it's fantastic. So.
What you say without losing the session? You wouldn't lose a session if you reloaded it.
Maybe another way of putting it is it doesn't lose what your current selected. If you're in a field, it doesn't lose focus.
Okay, so the data you have filled in the form, right?
Right. It won't lose anything.
Everything that's currently going on is still kept and maintained. Whereas you would think it's basically deploying code. You would think deploying code, there's potential always, to have issues, that kind of thing. I didn't want to you asked, so I don't want to forget you. Well, I was hoping you would rather than me. I'm just kidding. It's fine. Feel sure. No.
So how is this different than WebSocket, or is this just like a bigger interface for a WebSocket where it sockets everything?
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly what it is.
They're on the same page and we forget all these other things.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. But you just get all of the other goodies, just like with Drupal. And again, I'm seeing these parallels between these things. I credit Brian for getting me into the Meteor thing. He sent me a message this is 9 months ago, sent me a thing, said, check this thing out. And I was like, he sends me stuff all the time. And then I'm like, looked at it, I'm like, does it look cool? And then literally, and their website's not impressive, but they do have a new one coming. But so don't go by the website. You know how it is. Just like Drupal, right? Don't go by the website. It's pretty on the inside, we promise. But yeah, it's funny because a week later or something, 2 weeks later, we were talking at lunch or dinner or something, and we literally watched the video while a number of us were in there, watched the video, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is all of a sudden just a game changer. But you do get all the, I just, I haven't seen anything since my excitement for Drupal initially with Drupal 4 or 5 or whatever it was back in the day that I used. Since I haven't had that much excitement till this point. I mean, as far as potential. So I think it's pretty neat. So anyway, here's what I've got going on. This is real simple to show. And it's not super exciting, but I think anybody that's kind of geeky in here is going to be excited in some respect. I'm gonna fire up the Meteor instance of Spectacle front end on my local machine. So I'm typing MRT. I know I'm not typing Meteor. That is actually currently the way it's the packaging command system. So that's why it's MRT. It's not an alias, but it does actually pass through and do all the Meteor commands. So not to confuse. So it's firing up MongoDB. It tells me I have an update, which I'm afraid to update to right now. And I'm running. So the app's running. I don't know what it's going to look like. It's going to look weird. See, it's such a small screen, you can't see everything. It's trying to load. But it is running. And so I got that fired up. It's ready to receive data on that side. And on this other terminal window, I'm actually have a node server using Express. If familiar with that, using Express to kind of make a HTTP client, so we can receive the data from the Drupal side on the hook node presave, and it also then just turns around with there's a node DDP client, and it just takes that data and makes it DDP-ish and sends it out to Meteor. So here's how we're going to fire that up. I just do, and it's inside the module. And that's it. That's exciting, right? Listening on port 8080. I should do something more exciting. And if I refresh 8080, it tells me it's ready for spectacle connections. So what I have going here just plain is if I edit or add a post, and I'm only operating this one field. So if I was to, I'm not even gonna have to change it, but we want to know when will the bass drop. If you haven't seen the video on The Verge, you gotta go look that up. It's pretty funny, or it won't be if it's not funny. So we're just gonna save this. I'm just gonna save this because this is still gonna go through a node save and the whole works with the Drupal hook process. I'm gonna save it, and what's gonna happen is hook node pre-save is gonna make a request out. I'll show you the code in a second. It'll make a request out to this node server, which I'll show you the code for, and it's gonna take that and send DDP straight to Meteor, and Meteor has a Meteor method that's running on the server side of Meteor that's sitting there waiting. Come on, give me stuff, I'm ready for stuff all the time. I don't have to cron even, that's how awesome I am. I don't have to cron, I'm all the time ready for stuff. So we're gonna hit save, and we'll see stuff happen on the bottom left side. Hopefully you can see it. So I'm kicking stuff out to the console, but it's basically giving us our headers. It recognizes, our user agents coming through. Text, so I'm sending text. When will the bass drop? That is straight out of the Drupal field. We're making a DDP connection. It says it's connected. We get a session. Meteor server says, yes, here's your session. Here's your session hash. And then the result and updated is just showing that it did take the data, nothing went wrong, we didn't have any errors. And you're gonna keep seeing pings. I'm actually just event looping through the DDP session to see everything that's happening. So if other clients were connecting at the same time, I would be nervous because this is all local host and I'm firewalled. So if we see other stuff pop up besides ping, I'm really freaking out about right now. But that's what's going on there. So it's gonna keep running. So now if we open up, I got a little app called Mongo Hub, which is an okay way to look at MongoDB stuff, sort of, on the Mac. But so if I refresh, there's our ID. So I reset the database, by the way, before, just so we actually approve. And there's the text. So it made it in the Meteor. We successfully did it. So what are our challenges now? Our challenge as a group, continuing this project now, is I think we're ready now. We're ready to take all the fields we need and all the settings and everything that needs to be in the Mongo side and start pushing it over and having it update. We still got to deal with updates and how does the Mongo side and the Meteor side know, like we're gonna have to do it with NID or something. Probably NID's the way to go, but determine, is this an update to an existing record or not, and that sort of thing. But we also have the challenge, obviously, now that we've got a node server run and there's a lot of technical stuff here, documentation, that's super critical. So to host this kind of thing, we need to have good documentation or no one's gonna use it, people are gonna give up. So I do see that as being super important. So that is it at this point, and we're pushing forward, and this thing launches in 2 weeks. I tell everybody 2 weeks and it's ready to go. Like everybody else's projects, right? We have no specs, no requirements, 2 weeks, we're just making it up. And it's funny because the management has no clue what's really going on there. But I do keep saying there's lots of people all over the community working on this, so you guys are getting free development. Be excited about that. But anybody have any questions? We'll just kind of.
If you're using pre-save, what happens if the network's down?
If the network's down, it will not go there. And we've talked about this, so we're not. That's one of the things. That's definitely another thing on the list of something we have to deal with. I don't know yet. Like I don't know if we need to have a queuing system that can store it and then do it when the network comes back up, or and if anything, we need to send a watchdog notice. I still have lots of work with the guys to do on error trapping and a lot of things like that. But definitely that's a real thing, because I want to make this system somewhat resilient and have recommendations, like if you really want the client screens to still operate without Drupal being on, with the network down, and Meteor can continue to do things and operate since it's got its own local copy of the data, that's another advantage too. So
That was the second question, is it sounds like the Meteor clients will continue to run even though they can't touch bases with the Meteor.
that is the plan, and it does generally work that way. It's still pre 1.0 and there's still bugs, and 1.0 is not a magic number, we all know that, but there is a Trello roadmap. If you search for Meteor roadmap, you'll get a Trello board, and it does clearly say these are the things that we want to hit for 1.0, and they're again doing it very Drupal community like. They're not, you know, Symfony's different. I mean, I don't know if folks have got involved with Symfony, but Symfony is it's a release cycle. Man, whatever gets in, we're releasing on a date. Drupal's talking about doing that, right? I think there's some talk about that, but up until now, it's like it's ready when it's ready. Get off our backs, and that's kind of the way Meteor's been. Is like we want to make sure everything is what we need and in place, or what we determine. And they may still drop stuff. I mean, anybody that was around when Drupal 7 released, I mean, stuff started dropping like crazy. I mean, people were like, "Well, you dropped my thing. I wanted that in there." So it was, you know, that stuff happens. That's open source, and that's the fun part of it too. So. But yeah, these are all the dreams. These are dreams and wishes, right? At this point.
Meteor sounds like a great mobile-friendly platform where you could say, you know, I'm doing something on a cell phone and I lose the cell connection.
Yeah. In theory, it is definitely good, and they actually have a branch they just announced for testing. If people want to play with it, I think you can type Meteor to run it. You can literally type Meteor. I think if you do -- release or something like that, hyphen. Or equals, and then the name of the branch or the tag, it'll actually run that version. There's a Cordova branch, and they're really pushing to make sure that Meteor can work well within Cordova. Am I saying that right? It's basically PhoneGap. It's the open source. It's the one we like, right? The open source, the non-Adobe version of PhoneGap. I'm sorry, any Adobe people in here, but so yeah, I think it does have a lot of potential for mobile friendly, and again, more integration possibilities. You know, you're not going to beat, and we're looking at some mobile projects right now where Drupal it's exactly what people want. They want mobile, and they want a content management system. Well, I'm not going to do that in Meteor. I'm not going to do it in Rails or Django. I mean, I know Drupal, and the team knows Drupal. So we're going to back in that with Drupal. It is a great content management framework. But yes, it would be interesting to see if the user actually does their content management on Drupal side, but actually the app runs with Meteor. It's not. There's already examples. I think there's a pretty good blog post out there where someone's done the similar with just Node.js. So it's definitely possible. So that's out there. But good stuff. Any other questions or?
This is more of a Meteor general question, or maybe
Sure.
even a broader like JavaScript MVC question, which is like if you were building an actual page, I guess, in less of an app with Meteor, like how would you handle like the script and stuff and that type of thing? Use like Phantom.js or something like that, just sort of render or make something for the web crawlers?
That's a great question. And there is not a great answer yet. There are some SEO tricks. So what I understand, what I've heard, and I'm not involved in this one. I don't know if anybody else is in the room that can speak to it, but there are some on the roadmap for Meteor. There's definitely a want and a need and discussions all around having optional server rendering, which again is kind of ironic because I just told you 45 minutes ago how great Meteor is because it doesn't server render and send the whole thing, but to do initial server rendering, and maybe they'll make it selective on certain pages where you care about SEO, and then the pages that are more the application side of things, you just let it do its normal Meteor thing and don't worry about it. But that is the thing. There's a package on atmosphere.js.com where the packages live. Feels a lot like the Drupal module world. There's a package for I think it's called ms-SEO, and it has some methods for making SEO a little better. But yeah, SEO is weird. I mean, some Meteor sites, if I try to take the article and save it into Instapaper or to Pocket or something like that, it does some bizarre stuff and doesn't half work sometimes. So there's definitely some, and I think that's attributed to the same things you're talking about, just the way it's rendering and that sort of thing. But it's something that they're definitely aware of and something they're working on resolving. Well, guys, I appreciate it. Thanks for hanging with me.